All right, so welcome back. It's been a while, but it's been a very slow off season, especially for the Kings. But I'm back to make a two-part little series. This is gonna be the first episode. Basically, I want to talk about the eighth overall pick that the Kings got in the draft lottery. A little disappointing not to move up a little bit more, but can't complain after getting the second overall pick last year, I guess. And with this draft, it's such a crapshoot that, I think the best player could easily fall to eighth overall. And it's, obviously because of the whole coronavirus, a lot of players in especially the OHL not even playing in their respected leagues. So it's going to be an interesting draft. And this part I want to talk about if the Kings keep the pick, the eighth overall pick, who should they target? If they're available, who should the Kings draft, and who would make kind of the best addition to the team and the prospect pool. And then in the second video, I will talk about other options for the eighth overall pick. I think that one's going to be a little more controversial, but it is, I think, a big thinking point for the organization right now because let's face it, we have a lot of young players. We need to make changes. An eighth overall pick is a pretty good bargaining chip, and there's some big name players who want out of their teams. So we'll see what happens. But today, right now, we're gonna focus on the draft. If the Kings keep the eighth overall pick, obviously not moving up or down or anything like that. First, I want to say that, like I mentioned, this draft it's really hard to pinpoint exactly where people fall. This is just the kind of elite prospects mock draft that I'm going off of. But every mock draft is different. The numbers that people slide to vary dramatically, and it's tough to kind of talk about. But I want to make a video because I've been bored lately. I've been watching the playoffs. It's been fun. I'm rooting for the Canadiens. They're my kind of closest home team right now. And obviously Tyler Toffoli, you want to see him do well. And just I hate Vegas, and I don't want the Lightning to repeat. The Islanders, I guess, would be my second choice, but I don't have that much faith in them closing out the series. So let's talk about the draft. First, I think the top three are kind of set, in my opinion. I actually don't agree with this list. I think the top three is going to be Owen Power, most likely number one. I don't know for sure because Buffalo didn't really do well with Darlene, and it's not Darlene's fault. And I guess it's kind of just Buffalo doesn't do well with any of their prospects, really. But are they going to want to pick Owen Power again and kind of have two really young defensemen? I guess that's probably the safest option for them, but I don't know. But he's definitely going before the Kings pick. Matty Beniers, as much as I like him, he's going to be gone. And William Eklund, he's also going to be gone. 23 points in 40 games in the SHL. Really good for a draft eligible player. Then when you get down to it, Brandt Clark, I think, is probably going top five. And that's really all I can really guess. Everything else is going to vary. The Kings really could pick anyone from, I think, 5 on this list to, probably 14, 15, maybe even 20, because, Aatu Ratu was obviously for years considered the number one pick in this draft. He's really fallen, and, we'll see what happens with him. Chaz Lucius has had a lot of talk about him, and him potentially moving up higher in the draft. So like I said, I don't know, but I'm going to go through kind of the key players that I think could be available, and if they are, the Kings should go after them. The first one I'm going to talk about is Jesper Wallstedt. He played in Luleå in the SHL, and he had very good numbers for a young 18-year-old goalie. There's always that kind of talk about should you draft a goalie in the first round, and I feel like that's kind of been disproven recently. You look at the last picks. Askarov was picked last year. Haven't seen him yet, so can't really comment on that. Spencer Knight was picked the year before that. He's looked phenomenal so far. He had the great World Junior Tournament. He's been amazing in college. I think he was a solid pick. I don't think he's going to flop. And then you go back deeper, you have guys like Jake Oettinger. You have Andrei Vasilevsky, best goalie in the league right now. So I feel like when goalies are ranked this high now, it's not a fluke. It's not something that you should avoid. Should the Kings avoid it? Is a good question, because obviously we do have Cal Petersen. He's been labeled the goalie of the future. But for goalie of the future talk, he is on the older side. He's around 24 years of age. When you're talking about goalies, you don't want to rush him into the league. So you're thinking that there's probably 2 more years in the SHL for Wallstedt. I think, if he's available, I definitely want the Kings to do their due diligence on thinking about taking him, because by the time he's kind of NHL ready, Cal Petersen's going to be older. He's going to be kind of on his end of his contract, looking for big UFA money. And that's if he pans out. I'm not a Cal Petersen hater, but I'm not sure if he's done enough to really warrant a lot of the hype that he gets. I think he's definitely a really good goalie, and we're in a good spot with him. But with Jonathan Quick probably being off the team after next year, there is spots open, and you should always be trying to get 2 number 1 goalies. I mean, I know that sounds weird because you can only have 1 number 1, but if you can have 2, then take 2. And, when we look at the prospects that we have in the goalie position, you have guys like Connor Ingram, who I don't really think, is an NHL potential kind of player. Lucas Parikh, same thing. I think they're just not at that level. They can get there, in a couple of years, but at the moment they aren't. And, the Kings, we have a really good development program for goalies. And so bringing in a young, very, very high potential goalie, it would be a smart idea. I don't know if Wallstedt's going to be available, but if he is, like I said, the Kings should look at him. After him, his teammate from Luleå is Fabian Lysell. Lysell has a lot of ups and downs when people talk about him. I mean, you can look at his stats here in the SHL, and 3 points. It's not a good one, but that's not really his fault. In the SHL, they're not worried about developing their prospects, because if they have any high potential young players, they're expecting to lose them to the NHL. So, when he was in the junior team at Frölunda, great numbers. He was top line guy. He was kind of the number 1 guy on that team, and he played really well. When he went to the SHL, he was stuck on the 4th line. He was getting 5-6 minutes a game, really more of a defensive checking forecheck role, which he actually does pretty well at. He has a very high motor. He makes some good defensive plays with his stick, but there's a lot of lapses in judgment and a lot of bad reads that he makes that gets him in trouble. And then I think there's a little bit of kind of, attitude questions, which in my opinion, I feel like it's not a big deal, because I do think he was upset, and there were times where he wasn't playing 100% in the SHL, but that is because he was on the 4th line. He wasn't getting, power play time, anything like that. And, I feel like for a young player who is trying to make a case for themselves, is trying to get drafted high to the NHL, I think there was some unhappiness there. But, does he fit in with what the Kings need right now? I'm not sure. Because when you look at the guy below him, Dylan Guenther, who I don't think will be available at 8. I think he's much too good of a scorer and just has too much dynamic ability to get passed on. But he's a guy who, if both of them are available, Dylan Guenther is to play 100%. I mean, he brings the X factor. He brings that dynamic offensive ability that, honestly, the Kings don't have in their prospect pool right now. We have very good players, but a lot of it are guys like Alex Turcotte, who, is a 2-way guy. He has offensive skill, obviously, but more of that kind of hockey IQ kind of player. And even a guy like Quinn Byfield, who does have a lot of speed, he has offensive touch. You get the feeling that the Kings are trying to kind of mold him into that Kopitar role. And so it really is only Arthur Kaliev, who I can think of, who's just a dynamic scoring winger who just brings offense. And that's something that the Kings have lacked forever, is offense. And so, if Guenther's available, I think he's the best pick. I think Dylan Guenther has potential to be the best player in the draft. He reminds me a lot of the guys like Trevor Zegras, Cole Caulfield, who kind of got passed because maybe they were too small. They didn't, teams didn't think that those numbers would happen in the NHL level. And they're proving people wrong, and they're proving people that they should have been picked higher. And so if that is the case and Dylan Guenther is dropping, the Kings need to get him, because he is going to bring something that the team doesn't have. And it's an important aspect. It's an important aspect that this team has been looking for years. And if he falls into your lap, you have to snatch him up. Another thing that the Kings have been looking for years is big, strong, solid defensemen. I know there's a lot of kind of talk about how the Kings want to change their identity, and they've been trying to change their identity to go younger, faster, more skilled. But at the end of the day, no matter how much people want to talk about the game changing and the styles that work changing, big, strong defensemen who are great skaters is what wins. I mean, you look at the Final Four in the league right now, Montreal's been carried by Carey Price, but also by 4 destroyers on the blue line. Big, strong. They chip in offensively when they need to, but they're just rock solid, and that's what they base their whole game around. And the Kings they try to do a similar thing. The Kings play that 1-3-1 trap. The Montreal Canadiens right now are playing more of a trap style. You need a solid defense to be able to do that. And you see when the Kings are struggling this year, they're very good at stopping teams from getting into the blue line. But once those teams make it in, Kings just can't get the puck out. Their defense, we don't have the guys to do it. And when you think about, the cup winning teams, yes, like I said, you want to change the identity. I get that. But we don't have those solid defensemen, those guys like Robin Regeer, Willie Mitchell, Rob Scuderi. And you need that. You need that because, like I said, the Final Four right now, every team has it. You look at Pelech, Pulock on the Islanders. You look at Victor Hedman, who, kind of does it all. And it's really the closest comparable to Simon Edmondson. Edmondson's 6'5", really smooth skater, solid defensively. It's something that the Kings really are lacking, and we're lacking on defensive prospects in general. It's going to be interesting to see if Simon Edmondson even falls to the 8th pick, because this is kind of the defenseman's draft, and I could see a team reaching for him a little bit to get what, a lot of people look at as the next Victor Hedman. I mean, he has the tools. Can he put them all together like Victor Hedman? That's what we're going to find out in the future, but he's a solid pick, and he's another one like Dylan Guenther where I think if he's available, that's where the Kings need to go. Luke Hughes is the other big defenseman of the big 4, and while he does bring that dynamic offense that I was talking about, like I said, I don't think that's what you need right now to win in the NHL. The guys like Hughes and Makar that, are dynamic offensive defensemen, they all got knocked out, and they got knocked out by teams that have big, strong cores on the blue line. And look, Luke Hughes could do a lot of great things, and I don't know if people really understand exactly what his potential is, because you look at his brothers and you see what they've done, and they have a lot of skill, obviously, and he has a lot of skill, obviously, but the size aspect is going to be an issue. Quinn Hughes having that down year, it might not be fair, but it is going to hurt Luke Hughes' draft stock, I think. And so he is a guy who I do believe will be available at the 8th pick. I'm just not sure if that's what the Kings need right now. I think we need to kind of cinch everything up defensively, focus on bringing offense on the offensive side of the game, with better wingers especially. And I just don't know if Luke Hughes fixes the problems that we have right now. And then, that being said, those are kind of the two guys who I think are going to be in the area that I would like to look at. Wallstedt as a goalie could be an interesting pick. The Kings, we are in a position where we don't need young players. So if we do keep this pick, we have time, we have the resources to kind of sit on a Wallstedt and wait and see what he turns into. Ken Johnson's another guy who, could be available. Again, a really solid centerman, but I just fear it's more of that two-way kind of thing that the Kings have so much of. We have even guys like Akil Thomas who aren't kind of the top end of the prospect pool. Very similar style of players where they do everything. They put up points. They play good defense. I'm just not sure if the Kings want to go even more into that route and clog up the AHL, the NHL even more than it already is. And that being said, you draft best player available. You don't worry about that stuff. But in a year where the Kings really are looking to kind of shift the focus, shift from, rebuilders to contenders, you have to make some decisions at some point, and this draft could be a place where that happens. After this, after the top 11 guys, honestly, I don't know much about him. It's been a tough year for prospects. You got guys like Carson Lambos, another guy like Ratu, who people thought was going to be a top 2, top 3 pick, and has fallen. He was playing over in the second or the junior league in Finland. You got a guy like Mason McTavish who's ranked 5th on this list. I don't see it. He was playing in the second division in Switzerland, kind of trying to pull an Austin Matthews. Didn't put up great numbers. And I think he's a guy who, unfortunately, just because the OHL didn't play, it's going to affect him. But again, there is a lot of hype around him, so it will be interesting. Obviously, 9 goals in 13 games in a professional league, albeit a second tier. It's impressive, and it is something that you want to look at if you are the Kings. But I think that's going to be the video so far. When things kind of get closer to the draft, we can revisit. But at the moment, I just think that the Kings, like I said, they have to make a decision, and whether they keep the pick or use it as a trading chip, it'll be a big one. And if they do keep it, I think who you pick in this draft, it's less of kind of a right now decision like picking Byfield was, where you're picking a player who is going to be a cornerstone of your franchise, but more of a, where are we trying to end up? If you go with a Ford like Lysell, like Gunther, you're kind of saying, okay, we want to work on our wingers, our offensive output. If you go with the goalie, you're saying, hey, we want to, shore up one of probably the most important position in hockey. And then if you go with a defenseman, I think you're just, again, you're shoring up that defense. You're, kind of setting your plan into motion a little bit more because, whether you like Tom McClellan or not, he has his system. It's worked for us. There's been times where it hasn't worked, and I don't think it's the system's fault. I think it's who we have doing it, who we have playing. And so I think picking a defenseman would be a good opportunity to really solidify that kind of future for the Kings. But then again, if you want to move away from that, maybe you don't want to do that. So it'll be interesting. We'll have more, hopefully, to talk about as it gets closer to the draft. I think the draft's going to be in the end of June. And like I said, stay in tune, stay ready for the second part of this, where I talk about the 8th overall pick as a asset and what the Kings can do with it. I probably will talk about Jack Eichel. I know he's a lot of Kings fans right now online are scared of him. Don't want to even entertain a trade for him. But it is something that I do want to talk about because it's something that you have to talk about when a guy like Jack Eichel is available and you're one of the few teams that can afford him and go out and get him. You have to be you have to think about it at least. So thank you guys for watching this. Hopefully it wasn't too rambly, but I just wanted to get back on the channel and make a video to let you guys know I'm still here, just kind of waiting out the news, and hope you guys follow along as we get closer to the big events, the draft, free agency, all that stuff. It's going to be fun. It's going to be very important for the team as a whole, and hopefully we come out of it a lot better than we ended the year right now.